If you're tracking events with Google Analytics 4, sometimes you might want to include additional data with them, but just sending them is not enough. That's where you need to learn the concept of custom dimensions. Let's take a look. A dimension is an attribute that describes something, for example, an event, context, user, page, maybe something else. For example, it might be an ID of an element that was clicked, or it's a transaction ID, or user's registration country is also a dimension. User's pricing plan might be another example. Let's not forget product category and so on. In Google Analytics 4, the first column or the first several columns of the report, they are dimensions. For example, here in the events report, the first column shows the event name. So event name in this case is a dimension. In standard reports, you can add an additional column, which is called a secondary dimension. So you can click the plus, and then here you can select, let's say, the page path. And then we can see more attributes about the event. We can see what event happened, and then we see where that happened. So the slash in this context means homepage. These columns right here, these are metrics. They show the numbers. You can find a bunch of dimensions available in Google Analytics 4 by going to Explore, and then you can select blank. Here in the dimensions section, click plus, and here if I expand everything, you will see a lot of different dimensions available in Google Analytics 4. However, even though there are many of them, they still don't cover all the possible use cases. Your business might be very unique, so some dimensions will not just be available. And that's where you need to learn the concept of custom dimensions. Basically, custom dimensions are dimensions that are not available out of the box in Google Analytics. So you have to create your own. Here's an example. At Analytics Mania, I am selling online courses. Some courses are for beginners, some for more advanced users. That's why I would be interested in building a report about the course difficulty. That could be my custom parameter, or in other words, I could later register it as a custom dimension. Later in this video, I will show you how to do that. But in this context, course difficulty is an attribute of a product, of a course. And this dimension could have one of several values. For example, course for beginners, the intermediate course, and the advanced course. In this context, course difficulty level is one of the attributes that can describe my products, which are online courses. However, before we learn how to implement them in Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, first we need to learn one more important concept, which is scope. The scope answers a question of which events in Google Analytics 4 will get the value of a particular dimension. Currently, when I'm recording this video, Google Analytics 4 custom dimensions have 3 scopes. User, so if you send a user scoped custom dimension and you send it with one event, for example, pricing plan of the visitor, then all subsequent events of that user will also get the value of the pricing plan. So it applies pretty much to a user. All previous events are not affected, but all future events will get that custom dimension. Then we have an event scope. It applies only to that event with which the custom dimension was sent. For example, if you are sending a form submission event, together with that event, you could send a form ID or maybe some other information about the form. So that event will apply only to the form submission event. And if someone, let's say, clicks a link on a website which is unrelated to the form, then the form ID dimension will not apply to that link click. And then the final scope, which is available in GE4, is item scope. This is related to e-commerce events. For example, if you're selling some products on your website and you want to track which sizes are sold the most, then size can be sent together with it, and you can later use that to build a report. Now let's take a look how can we implement custom dimensions in Google Analytics 4. Here I have a demo website, and on this page we have a contact form. This was built with a popular WordPress plugin, which is called Contact Form 7. Now let's imagine a situation that on this website, there might be some pages that contain 2 forms. Maybe one form is for newsletters and the other one is for the contact form. If we just track the form submission, we won't be able to distinguish easily which form was submitted, because the page URL of both forms will be the same. They are on the same page. So we need to come up with some other option of how to distinguish which particular form was submitted. So first, let's implement the general form tracking, and then we will see how can we add additional dimensions. For example, form ID might be useful. Below this video, you will find a guide where I explain how to track Contact Form 7 with Google Tag Manager. In a nutshell, you need to copy this particular code right here and implement it in Google Tag Manager as a custom HTML tag. So here in Google Tag Manager, I will create a new tag, then click Tag Configuration, Custom HTML, and I will paste this code. Then in the triggering, I will select all pages, and then I will save the tag, which can be named like this. Then click Save. Now let's check if this is working. So click Preview. Then in this window, I will enter the URL of the page where Contact Form 7 is located, and I will click Connect. Now I will submit the form and click Send. Here, I should see the CF7 submission event, and together with that event, our custom code also sent the form ID, which is 40. But if I had a different form, then the form ID value would also be different. So we could actually send a form submission event to Google Analytics 4, and together with that event, we could also include the form ID. That way, later in the reports, we could know which particular forms were submitted. So the first step to achieve this would be to create a variable that accesses the form ID. And I'm talking about Google Tag Manager variable. Then we will be able to use it in our setup. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, Variables, and then click New. Select Variable Configuration and enter Data Layer Variable. This variable can fetch the data from the data layer, and in our case, we are interested in form ID. So I will copy it and I will paste it right here. Then I will save the variable, and now we can create an event tag that will send the form submission event to Google Analytics 4. Because remember, custom dimensions are sent together with events. It might be page view event, might be form submission, or something else. So now let's go to tags. In this video, I assume that you have already installed Google Analytics 4 in Google Tag Manager. That can be done by having the Google tag, and inside that Google tag, you enter your GA4 measurement ID. If you have no idea how this is done, then I will post a link to another tutorial below the video where I explain specifically how to install GA4 with Google Tag Manager. So let's click New, Tag Configuration, Google Analytics, GA4 event, and here we have to enter the event name and the measurement ID. You can either paste it as a plain text right here, or you can create a variable. So first of all, let's go to Google Analytics, then click Admin, Data Streams, and select your web data stream. Here you should copy the measurement ID, and then let's go to Google Tag Manager. So you can either enter it right here, or a better option would be to create a new constant variable that you would be able to reuse in your future GA4 tags as well. So we can do that by clicking this button, then plus, variable configuration, and select constant. Here you should paste your measurement ID of GA4. And then we can name this variable like that. Click Save. So now let's remove that measurement ID. And now Google Analytics 4 tag will take the measurement ID from this variable. Also, this verification tells you that you already have a Google tag or GA4 configuration tag that contains the same measurement ID. Several minutes ago, you might have seen that I had a different measurement ID in my GA4 configuration tag, but I paused the video and I updated the Google tag so that it also contains that particular measurement ID, which is available in my property right here. So now the event name. We can name this event, for example, form submission. And together with that event, we can send a parameter that shows the form ID. It might be 40, it might be 55, whatever the form is. So to send some parameter with the event, you can click the event parameters section in the event tag, click add parameter, and then enter, let's say form ID might be good enough. And then in the value, you click this button and then select the data layer variable that we created. Now let's select the trigger. This particular tag must fire when we have CF7 submission right here in the preview mode. To do that, we will need to create a custom event trigger. Go to Google Tag Manager, click Triggering, then click the plus to create a new trigger, trigger configuration, and then select Custom Event. Here we will enter CF7 submission, name the trigger, and then save it. Finally, let's name this tag and click Save. Let's test if this is working properly, if the event is being sent, and we see that form ID in Google Analytics 4. So click Preview. Then go to the website. I will submit the form like that. And then I see the form submission. Here is that event tag. Also, you might notice that you have some other events. So these are coming from GA4, but personally, I would say that they are very unreliable because there is a chance that if you submit the form incorrectly, you will still get the form submit event. And in most normal cases, when we track forms, we want to track only successful form submissions. That's why I'm using the custom code and this CF7 submission event. So the tag has fired. Now let's go to Google Analytics. And while I am in the admin section, let's go to debug view. And here I see some events, and one of them is form submission. The form start is coming from a thing called enhanced measurement of GA4, but in this case I will ignore it because my custom setup is sending form submission. I can click this event, and one of the parameters is form ID. If its value here was something else like 55, then its value would be 55 here as well. So we are sending this parameter, and even though I would expect that this form ID parameter should be recognized by GA4 by default, when I'm recording this video, there is no built-in form ID dimension in Google Analytics 4. That's why we need to register a custom dimension. When you are sending some custom parameters to Google Analytics 4, and in this case, the parameter is page location, page refer, form ID. So if you're sending some custom parameter and form ID is one of them, then you need to register a custom dimension. To do that, you will need to go to admin, then custom definitions, click create custom dimension, and here you will need to register an event scoped custom dimension because we want this particular dimension to be applied only to that form submission event. We don't want to apply it to link clicks because when the link is clicked, there is no form ID. So I will just name this form ID like that. Right now I'm getting this error because I have already registered a form ID dimension in the past, but in your case, if you're doing this for the first time, you will not get this error. Then the scope is event, and here you have three options, but in this case, it must be event. And then we have to enter the event parameter. In my case, I am sending a parameter called form_ID, all lowercase. So I have to use this exact value in the settings of the event parameter as well. But again, I'm getting error because I already have it. So once you configure the custom dimension and save it, it will be created in your property. And here is that dimension that I created a while ago. So after you have created a custom dimension, then you would need to publish your Google Tag Manager container changes. So you can do that by clicking submit and then completing all the steps. And after this moment, you will need to wait 24 hours. And after you get actual submissions from your visitors, then you will start seeing that data in your reports. Here's a very quick example. So if I go to Google Analytics, I go to Explore, then I click blank. Here I can quickly build a table of form IDs of those forms that were submitted. So in the dimensions, I will add plus, and then I will look for form ID. It's in the custom section because that's a custom dimension. I click this checkbox and import. Then in the metrics, I will go simple and I will include event count. I click it and I import it. Now I can double click it to add it to the report, then double click the metric. And here I can see one ID and a lot of not set. That's because this is a test property and there are a lot of other events that do not contain the form ID. So I could narrow this down only to form submission events. Let's click on the plus in the dimensions section and then enter event name. I click this and I import it. Now let's scroll down and add a filter because right now we are looking at all events of this property, but I want to check only form submission events. So I will click this section in the filters, then event name exactly matches form submission and click apply. Right now, there is no data because there are two reasons for that. First of all, this is a test property. And in the last month or so, I did not have any form submission events. And this event that I sent just a few minutes ago, it still did not have enough time to be processed because Google Analytics needs at least 24 hours. However, if I recall correctly, I did some random tests with form submission events maybe several months ago. So I will click the date picker and I will select a longer time period, let's say from June. I click apply, and here are some tests. I still have one not set because apparently I had a form submission event where I was not sending form ID, but then I had another event where contact form was the ID of the form. In fact, I could probably select even longer time period to see what do I have. And here we have more form IDs. So this is how you can configure event scoped custom dimensions. When it comes to user scoped custom dimensions, the process has some differences. So I will go to Google Tag Manager, and then the best option would be to create a thing called event settings variable. So I will go to variables. If you already have a GA4 event settings variable, then you will need to edit your existing variable. But right now I don't have that variable. That's why I will create a new one. So in the variables section, I will click new, then variable configuration, and then Google Tag event settings. And here we have a section called Google Analytics user properties. So here you will need to add a property, or in other words, some custom parameter that you want to apply as a user scoped custom dimension. For example, maybe you want to send a pricing plan of the user because it rarely changes. Here you can come up with some parameter name, and then here you can insert a variable that contains the pricing plan. I will not be showing those steps, but ideally you would need to ask a developer to push the pricing plan to the data layer, and then you use a data layer variable to fetch the pricing plan, and then you insert that variable here. So now let's imagine that I have a pricing plan in the data layer. That's why I will click a button to insert a new variable. I will create a new variable, and its type should be data layer variable. Here I will enter, let's say, pricing plan, like that, because let's imagine that this is the name of the parameter in the data layer, and I will name this variable and save it. So once you include that user property, or in other words, you can call it, let's say, user related parameter, then you need to save this variable. And then you need to go to tags and make sure that the settings variable is included in all GA4 tags, starting with the configuration tag. So go to GA4 configuration, which is also known as Google tag, edit it, and then go to shared event settings and select that variable that we just created. Click save, and then do the same thing in all other event tags that you have. So in my case, that's form submission. Here I will click the pencil, and in the event parameters section, I will select my variable. So this tag will now take the settings from this variable, but also from this section. So it will get the pricing plan from the settings variable and form ID from the tag configuration, and click save. So once you test that and you see that the user property is being sent to Google Analytics and you see that in the debug view, your next step would be to register that user property as a user scoped custom dimension. So you will need to go to Analytics, Admin, then Custom Definitions, Create Custom Dimension, and here we're talking about pricing plan, so I will call this, let's say, pricing plan. And the event parameter must be exactly what you have in the settings variable. So if I click it here, that's the parameter name. So pricing underscore plan. If you name it something else, then that something else must be used. Now I go to Analytics and enter the parameter name here. Also, it's important to select user as a scope. I get the error right here because I already have this dimension registered before this video. And if I enter it right here, I also get that error. But if you haven't done this before, then you will not get these errors. And click save, publish your changes in Google Tag Manager, wait 24 hours, and you should start seeing that data in your reports. As for item scoped custom dimensions, they work only if you are tracking e-commerce events that are mentioned in the documentation, which is purchase, add to cart, begin checkout, and so on. Then in the data layer, your developer must include items, and inside the items array, you must have some information about the product. So item ID is a standard parameter, item name is also standard, then price, quantity, and so on. But the size is a custom one. So your developer must include, together with all events in the items array, that custom parameter. In my case, that is size. So once you have implemented e-commerce tracking and you have item scoped parameter right here, then your next step will be to create another custom dimension, which is also done in admin, custom definitions, create custom dimension, and here you could enter size. Also, we should change the scope to item. So you have size here, and then you have size here. I'm entering size in this field because that is the parameter name in the data layer. If you want to learn more about items code custom dimensions, I will post a link to a documentation below the video. But the general concept is the one like I explained it in this video. And that's how you can track custom dimensions with Google Analytics 4. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up button below the video. That will help me understand what videos you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager, then consider subscribing to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.